Yeah.
How many people have read the Cluetrain Manifesto? I'm looking out there. Okay.
Yeah.
Summarize for the audience kind of what Cluetrain was and is, and how it came about.
Yeah, so the Cluetrain Manifesto was a, as I was telling John earlier, it was something that was of its time, but also had a more enduring quality to it. It was written during the dot-com boom, and it was at a time when marketers were calling us eyeballs, and the whole idea was you made a sticky site, and we thought that the part of the promise of the net, which was independence for individuals and businesses other than the ones we were already familiar with, was just not being paid attention to. So there was this one line in the Cluetrain Manifesto, the first of 95 theses, and we had 95, by the way, because that worked for Martin Luther, and we called it a manifesto because that worked for Karl Marx. That was the only reason. And Cluetrain because that name was not taken as a domain name, basically. It was based on a joke that the Cluetrain stopped there 4 times a day for 10 years and nobody took delivery, about a company that, by the way, lived. It was actually about Apple at the time. But the first thesis was markets are conversations, which was mine. That was actually possibly the only thesis I contributed to it. And what's happened is that you guys, the marketers, have actually taken off with this quite well. I mean, the Cluetrain is now part of the marketing canon, and conversation is recognized as something that's really important and direct engagement. But what's sort of missing is a line that Chris Locke uttered that was actually above the 95 theses that said, "We are not seats or eyeballs or end users or consumers. We are human beings, and our reach exceeds your grasp. Deal with it." And my feeling since then has been that isn't yet true, that our reach does not yet exceed, our reach being as individual persons, as individual customers, does not exceed the grasp of the people trying to reach into our wallets, which in our cases here are the same thing, right? We are both marketers and we are customers. And those things are to some degree a bit opposed, which I think is what the theme of this show is about. So what I've been working on in the years since is trying to make that original promise of the Cluetrain come true by equipping individuals rather than just sellers. In the Bay Area, I will check in, and some friends of mine may contact me. So that's a difference already that we have, where we're willing to put out a little bit of effort. There's a law that is behind Silicon Valley and most of the invented world, which is invention is the mother of necessity. I need a smartphone because one got invented, right? So there are inventions that haven't happened yet and will happen that are going to give us more control over the data that we spill in the world, the data that we organize. There are a number of things that are moving in the same direction at the same time. So for example, self-tracking. There's a whole conversation around self-tracking in personal informatics. There's a point at which withings scale and the thing that measures your blood for diabetes, if you have that, and Foursquare and a bunch of other things start feeding a database that you have,
right,
that you selectively share or disclose to other parties for reasons that are useful to you. At some point that gets convenient. And when that happens, then the ecosystem changes. And we have an ecosystem then where we are at the center of our worlds and not at the edges of many other worlds. Again, I think we're a few inventions away, and then we'll find out how that works out. I think that obsessing about privacy and obsessing about who owns what, especially the term ownership, is not real productive. I think that they are hairballs, and they're what Don Norman calls a black hole. You drop it in the middle of a room, and its event horizon exceeds the dimensions of the room, and you can't help talking about privacy forever and never getting anywhere. We're in an invention or two away. It's just going to take something that we haven't seen yet that we discover. In the meantime, we need to care about it, but I'd rather just see new inventions. It's sort of like there are 2 stages in history I think we resemble right now. One is when there were railroads and not cars, and so the railroad was the iron horse, but we didn't end up riding horses. We ended up riding cars. Cars give us independence, so we need to be, as individuals, drivers and not passengers. Right now we've got a passenger model. It is not going to be hard conceptually to change that to where we each have our own terms of engagement, and those terms of engagement are very straightforward and simple. You can use this data if you anonymize it. You can use this data if we have this very simple agreement. And we're basing that on Creative Commons. Creative Commons did not change law. It took existing law and changed practice around that law. So that is a piece that is going to get sorted out, I think, in the next year to year and a half. When that happens, I think that opens up an awful lot of new commerce where the customer shows up saying, not, here's my data and give me an appropriate ad for it, but rather, here is cash in the barrelhead demand that I have right now, and here are the security conditions attached to it. Who's interested? And then having demand find supply rather than supply find demand.